Well, you know, I do look at the world like that. You know, if you're born into a crazy place and you're brought up in the crazy place and you become an adult in the crazy place and all you've ever known in your life is a crazy place, then to you, crazy is normal. And when someone comes from outside or has started to see it from inside and says, actually, this is a crazy place. Well, you are seen as crazy because you're not normal. You're not the normal, that is actually madness, that people have become used to. And this is the thing, Brian, you know. What is normal? Normal is only what we normally experience. So if you are living in the outback of Australia, your normal is never seeing anyone pass your house, never seeing a vehicle. But if you're born in downtown London or live here, your normal is never not seeing vehicles and people everywhere. And so when a vehicle passes someone in the outback, they say, "Oh, look, there's a car. That's not normal." And then someone walks down an empty London street and they say, "Oh dear, what's going on?" That's not normal. Normal is only what we normally experience. And thus, if we live in a crazy place, then that's what we normally experience. And this is how things are. And you're born into a world. And when you come into the world, it's got great relevance for what's going on now, actually, this. Then you take the world to be as it is when you arrive. So you come into a crazy place, but, well, this is how it is. So you don't see it as crazy. And therefore, when someone like me is questioning everything about the crazy place and seeing if it stands up to scrutiny, and most of it doesn't, then, of course, mainstream society is going to see you as mad. I take that as a compliment. It's one of the things I say in the book. To be called mad by an idiot, as I put it, is a compliment. And I've been called mad by many idiots over the years, I can tell you. Many of them journalists, funnily enough. But it's just something you have to live with, and you have to come to terms with and accept. When you're challenging normality, then that which has accepted normality to be the real world is going to see you as crazy. Can't be any other way. Thing is, though, and I've found this over the last nearly 30 years, if what you say has validity, and you keep saying it, despite all the abuse and all the ridicule, you keep saying it. If it has validity, that's the key. If it doesn't, it won't go anywhere. But if it does, eventually it will be shown to be so. And that's the process that I've been through. It's nothing like completed yet, but it's moving that way, where world events are concentrating people's minds on the fact that the world isn't like they thought it was, and they don't like the way the world's going. They feel uneasy about it, and that has got people to, in greater numbers, to look at what I've written in the past, which is basically saying the world that we have now and we're going deeper into is the one that's been planned all along. This is the basis of what I've been trying to get across all these years. The world is not random. The world is moving in the direction it is because it's been planned to do that. This is why Aldous Huxley in Brave New World, 1932, and George Orwell, Eric Blair, as he was really called, with 1984, published in 1948, that's why they've been so incredibly accurate in predicting the way the world is going, because they weren't coming totally from their imagination. Because this plan for the global Orwellian state of total control, which is daily coming in, I mean, look around, it's not been planned for 5 years or 10 years. It's been planned for a long, 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 long time.
What do you see when you see the world today, and what should we be focused on? What are the big things that you see as, okay, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening?
Well, what I'm seeing is more and more people beginning to question what they've not questioned before. That is incredibly encouraging. And I've just finished a world speaking tour over the last 18 months. I've been all over the world. It's happening everywhere. And it's not just the numbers, it's the kind of people, what I would call system people. You'd never think would ever question the system, but they are. So, because in the end, this global conspiracy that I've been exposing for 3 decades is basically the hijacking of human perception. Because if there's a few of you, and compared with the target population of 7.5 billion, something like that now, the number of people in full knowledge of what they're doing is tiny.
Hundreds, thousands.
Thousands maximum. At the core, hundreds at the core. At the core of the core, even less. And the rest of the structure is fiercely compartmentalized. So people are daily, different parts of this global web structure, playing a part in pushing the world in the direction I'm talking about, to this centralized world dictatorship, without realizing that's what they're doing. It's a tiny, tiny number. So given the mathematics, you can't physically control your target population. There's not enough of you. Yes, you can do it through people in uniform, which is manipulating the target population to police the target population, but you can't do it en masse. What you need to do is control the perceptions of the population, because perception is everything. Perception dictates what you believe, what you don't believe, what you'll challenge, what you won't challenge, what you'll accept, you won't accept, support, won't accept, support, everything. Once they've got your perceptions, they've got you, and they've got your life, and they've got the collective perception. They have humanity. This is why they want to control the information that people receive and to marginalize alternative ways of looking at the world, because where do perceptions come from? They come from information received. It might be a personal experience, information, or it might be the 10 o'clock news. But with most people, it's going to be the 10 o'clock news, but it's information. So if you want people to have a certain perception of a world event, the world in general, of who we are and the nature of reality, then control what people receive, and then you'll control their perception. When I look at the world, I see vast numbers of people who are perceptually programmed. And when I break it down in the book, when you look at a human life, it's basically a perceptual programming and download from cradle to grave. You come out of the womb and immediately you're influenced by your parents in terms of your perceptions. And they're not being malevolent, most of the time anyway, the vast majority, but they've been through the system you're about to go through, the process you're about to go through. They've bought it, accepted it as normal, accepted the crazy place to be sane, and therefore, out of wanting to do right for you, they'll pass those perceptions on to you. And then, take a deep breath, take a step back, look at it again. When you think about it, Brian, you come out of the womb, and within 4 years, you've only just got here. You're sitting at a desk with an authority figure representing the state's version of everything in front of you, telling you when you have to be there, when you can leave, when you can speak, when you can go to the toilet, when you can eat, what is, what isn't, what's possible, what's not possible, and the nature of everything. And this goes on all the way through your formative years, into higher education, if that's where you go. And it's a download of normal, a perception of normal. What I call it the postage stamp consensus. It's a narrow band of sense of the possible, which has basically been repeated, one of the greatest forms of mind control, repetition, 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 all the way through your formative years. You then go out from there into the institutions. You become a journalist, you become a politician, you become a doctor, you become a scientist, you become a CEO, whatever. And you take with you into those institutions this core version of normal. And And when you go as a young person into those institutions are already pillars, solidified concrete pillars of the same sense of normal. So now you've left school, but where you're working is still confirming to you that the madhouse is sane and normal is how things are. A journalist who's doing a story on a medical condition will not go to a complementary practitioner who may have had great success in treating the particular ailment they're writing about. They'll go to a doctor, and the doctor will give him the song sheet, postage stamp consensus version of that problem.
And so normal are kind of what we believe about medicine, everything. Capitalism, government, all these things are these normals that we've been programmed.
Because it's basically, Brian, all people here. I call it the mainstream everything. The mainstream media, mainstream science, mainstream medicine, mainstream journalism. They're all unknowing, most of them, the vast majority, agents of the postage stamp consensus. Then you add the fact that the global media, now 24/7, is reporting world events constantly, in all their multiple different ways, from the same postage stamp normal. So, people like me who left the postage stamp a long time ago and it passed over the horizon a long time ago, we're crazy, not by breaking down what we're saying, but by reflex action, because that's not normal. That's not on the postage stamp. Then you look at politics, and we got a choice between left, right, and centre, what's called the political class. That's very, very true, political class. But I would call it something else. It's the postage stamp consensus political class, because the left in politics is on the left of the postage stamp, the centre somewhere in the centre, and the right's on the right of the postage stamp. But they're all on the postage stamp, still coming from this perception of normal that is about, use another analogy, about the size of a pea.
So it's the illusion of choice.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have peer pressure, because all those people who, the vast majority, have accepted this download of normal, with the blinkers on, I have no problem with that. If you want to give your mind away to someone else's perceptual program, fine. The problem comes when those people think that they can then dictate, ridicule, intimidate those that have a different view. Because that's psychological fascism for me. If we're going to have a discourse, we should have all opinions in the discourse. But this is not what happens. The postage stamp consensus is policed by those that have downloaded it and accepted it. For a long time, I've used the analogy of sheep and the sheepdog. People laugh at sheep because they follow the one in front and they follow the shepherd, and then they run away from the sheepdog, symbolic of fear. But humans have out-sheeped the sheep. We don't even need a sheepdog. We police each other. You can't say that. What will your mother say? What will the people at work say? I don't care. I don't care what they say. They have a right to believe what they believe, but actually, funnily enough, so do I, even if it's different. So the stadium in which this control of humanity is played out is in human perception. And what's happened over the last few years, because when I started out nearly 30 years ago, there was no alternative media. For young people today, they might find this kind of seriously ancient, unbelievable. But when I started out doing what I do, you communicated by printing off leaflets and handing them out in the street. There was no internet. But as this has grown, and the internet has grown, there has been, and this is the key, there has been an alternative source of information to the postage stamp consensus. Now, to be honest, I think that one of the drawbacks, or not drawbacks, no, one of the limiting things about the alternative media is that much of that still comes from the postage stamp consensus. It might be on the right beyond the far edge, but it's still on the postage stamp consensus. This is why much of the alternative media dismisses and has ridiculed me over the years as much as the mainstream has. So I don't think it goes far enough in delving into things like the nature of reality, which has fundamentally importance to human freedom. But when you look at how this alternative information has actually given people another way of looking at the same thing, another way of looking at 9/11, another way of looking at the banking system, another way of looking at terrorist attacks and what they use to justify. And people have got more streetwise. Some of us have talked in depth about the nature of reality itself, and people have gone, hold on, maybe the world's not like I thought it was. And what this has done has, not in its entirety, but it's been massively influential in triggering this gathering reassessment of what people perceive about the world, about themselves, about world events. And that's why now we're seeing this war on freedom of speech. We're seeing the Silicon Valley giants in the devil's playground, more and more algorithmically controlling the flow of information, using hoaxes like fake news, because they don't want this information circulating, because their perceptual imprisonment is being unraveled by alternative information. And we are now at a point where the efforts to suppress alternative information are going to get hysterical. They already are.
Is that manifested in political correctness?
Political correctness is quite simply getting the target population to silence itself. That's what it is. And, you know, as I've said, this plan has been around a long time. And it's been incrementally introduced step by step, what I call the totalitarian tiptoe. And every step has been projected and promoted as unconnected to the other steps. But when you start seeing patterns, you can see it so.
But they didn't plan on the alternative media, or did they?
Well, yeah, I'll come to that.
Okay.
I think they were surprised by it, but that's an interesting point, an interesting story. But what I was talking about there was the way this has been incrementally done and has been brought in step by step by step, and where it's meant to end is with the total control of human perception